The sun hit the rooftop gently as Ion waited outside the school gate. His shirt had 2 missing buttons, and the sole of his shoe flapped each time he walked. But he didn't care. He was smiling, looking up the road, waiting for someone. A few minutes later, a boy came running here messy, backpack swinging behind him, and dust all over his knees. Sorry. Abu made me clean the shop before leaving, the boy shouted. Ion laughed. I knew you'd come late, Zaid. Zaid grinned, and threw an arm over Ion's shoulder. But I came, didn't I? That was their friendship. 2 boys from different struggles but with the same dream to rise above it. They didn't need fancy phones or clean uniforms. What they had was loyalty, dreams, and a promise that they would never leave each other behind. Zaid's father ran a roadside shoe repair stall. Ion's mother worked as a cook in 4 houses. Both lived in narrow streets where windows stayed broken and water only came twice a day. Yet in each other's company, they felt rich. After school, they would run to the public library. The security guard had a soft spot for them and often let them stay after hours. While others played video games, they memorized English words from old books. One day, we'll give speeches in English so strong, the world will stop and listen, Zaid once said, pounding his fist on the table. Ion nodded, and we'll walk onto stage together, both of us side by side. Years passed, their bond only grew deeper. They shared food, books, dreams, even silence. When Ion's mother fell sick and was hospitalized, it was Zaid who spent nights with him on the cold bench outside. When Zaid's father had a stroke and couldn't work, Ion convinced his mother to bring leftover food every day for them. Their love for each other was not loud, but it was unshakable. One winter morning, everything changed. Their school announced a scholarship program. A well-known private university was offering full rides to students from low-income families. The catch: only 2 students would be shortlisted for final interviews. Ion and Zaid had top grades. The teachers whispered it was between them. That evening, the 2 boys sat under their favorite banyan tree near the railway line. Zaid looked worried. What if they choose you, but not me? Ion threw a pebble at a leaf above. Then I won't go, he said simply. We started together, we finished together. Zaid smiled but didn't speak. A shadow passed over his eyes quick, but Ion missed it. They applied, worked harder than ever, prepared for mock interviews, rehearsed in mirrors, corrected each other's posture and pronunciation. They even promised to wear the same shirt on interview day, a light blue one. Slightly faded but neat dot. But 3 days before the interview, something odd happened. Ion's documents, his ID, his application letter, and even his academic records disappeared from his school file. The principal called him in and asked, "Did you take your papers home?" He hadn't. Panic rose in his throat. He ran to every teacher, every office drawer. Nothing. Zaid wasn't in school that day. His phone was off. No one knew where he was. That night, Ion didn't sleep. His mother cried quietly in the next room. "Bader, it's okay. Maybe it's not meant to be," she whispered. But Ion felt hollow. The dream he had built brick by brick was suddenly dust. The next day was the interview. Ion still went. Maybe someone could help. Maybe someone would listen. But when he reached the college gate, wearing the light blue shirt they'd picked together, he froze. Standing near the main door, laughing with other students. Wearing that same shirt was Zaid. He was holding a black folder. His ID tag said, "Interview candidate." His face looked brighter, sharper, cleaner. His eyes met Ion's for a second, but instead of coming over, he turned his face and walked inside. Ion stood frozen on the sidewalk, his hands trembling. For a moment, the noise of traffic, the honking, the shouting, all went silent. Only one thing echoed in his head. He went alone. The boy who once said we rise together, or not at all, had left him behind. Ion walked back home that day like a ghost. The blue shirt stuck to his back with sweat. His shoes made no sound. At home, he didn't speak. He didn't eat. He just stared at the wall. 2 days later, his teacher came to visit. "I heard what happened," she said gently. "The scholarship list just came in." Ion didn't react. The teacher handed him a newspaper clipping. There was a photo of Zaid receiving a certificate, smiling with folded hands. "The boy from the slums with perfect English, Zaid Khan, wins full scholarship," the headline said. Ion's fingers curled around the paper. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just whispered one sentence, "But we made that speech together." That night, as the rain tapped softly on the tin roof, Ion stared at the ceiling and asked himself the question that would haunt him for days. Was I just a stepping stone in his story? And somewhere, in the middle of that long, sleepless night, a fire began to burn, not of anger, but of purpose. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. He just didn't know it. Yet Ion stopped going to school after that day. For the first few mornings he still got ready, wore his uniform, and stood outside the gate staring at the classrooms from a distance. But he never stepped inside. His teachers called, his classmates whispered. He must be ashamed. Zaid won. He lost. No one knew what really happened. No one asked why the top student vanished without a fight. Inside his home, silence became louder. His mother watched him with worried eyes. She cooked his favorite food, placed it on the floor, and sat beside him. But Ion didn't touch it. "You should go out," she said softly one evening. Even if the world forgot you, you don't forget yourself. But Ion just looked at the wall. His eyes weren't full of hate, they were empty. Then one day, an old man knocked at their door. "Is this Ion's house?" he asked, holding a cracked leather bag and a dusty notebook. "I'm Master Golzer. I used to teach your father before he passed." Ion's mother nodded, surprised. "Yes, this is his son." The man stepped in, sat down slowly, and turned to Ion. "Your father was a fighter. He never gave up. I see his face in you. But your eyes, they've stopped dreaming." Ion looked down. "Dreams are dangerous. They make you believe in people," he whispered. Master Golzer reached into his bag and pulled out a worn notebook. It had Ion's father's name on the cover. He used to write here. Stories, ideas, quotes. "Before he died, he told me, 'Give this to my son when he's ready to fall and rise again.'" Ion's fingers trembled as he took the notebook. Inside were scribbled pages, notes, doodles, but on the last page, in bold letters, was one sentence. "The world will betray you. That's when you become unforgettable." Ion closed the book and wiped his eyes. Something shifted inside him, like a door opening after years. That night, he wrote a letter to his old teacher, thanking her for everything. Then he walked to the library where he and Zaid used to study. It was locked, but he sat outside on the steps with his father's notebook, reading every line. Every quote lit a small fire inside him. In the following weeks, Ion changed. Slowly, quietly. He started helping younger kids in the neighborhood with homework. Most of them didn't go to school. He taught them under a streetlight near the tea shop. Word spread, more children joined. He made flashcards from old cardboard, wrote English words on stones, and painted math tables on a broken wall. Some laughed at him. The failed student is now a teacher. But the children loved him. One day, a local reporter walked by, saw the kids sitting in rows, and asked, "Who's your teacher?" They all shouted in unison, "Ion Bai." The next morning, Ion's photo was in the local paper. Dropout becomes hope for slum kids. Zaid saw the paper too. He was in a well-furnished university hostel now, living a life Ion once dreamed of. His classmates praised him. Professors admired his story. But that day, when he saw Ion's face in the paper, a strange heaviness filled his chest. He put the paper down quietly. Back in the slums, Ion kept teaching. His wall school now had benches made from crates, a tin roof, borrowed from a shopkeeper, and a big chalkboard he painted himself. A retired principal donated books. A local shop gave snacks for the kids. Slowly it stopped being just a corner in the street. It became a place where forgotten children found light. One evening, a girl named Nita came running to Ion, holding a letter. "Bye, you won't believe this. I got selected for a government scholarship. They're giving me a uniform, books, everything." She hugged him tightly. Ion smiled, his eyes wet. "I told you, Nita, you're a star. The world just needed to see you shine." But not everyone was happy. Some local leaders saw the attention Ion was getting and felt threatened. "He's making us look bad. If people follow him, they'll stop fearing us," one of them said. That night, while Ion was returning home, two men followed him. They stopped him near the garbage dump. "Shut down your school," one of them growled. "It's not your job to change this place." Ion stood still. "If not me, then who?" he replied. One of the men pushed him hard. He fell, dust-filled. His mouth they walked away, leaving him bruised. But as he got up, he saw something under the dim streetlight. Nita, standing there, watching everything. "Bye," she whispered. Ayan dusted himself off, winced in pain, and smiled. "This means we're on the right path." But the next day, something happened that would change everything again. As he arrived at his wall school, he saw a black car parked nearby. Zaid couldn't sleep that night. Ion's words echoed in his ears. The calm voice, the quiet strength, the truth that felt heavier than guilt. He remembered the last time they stood together. Ion confused and heartbroken. Zaid proud and full of lies. No one had forced him to betray Ion. He did it himself. Out of fear, out of jealousy. Ion had always been the better one, kinder, smarter, more focused. But when Zaid got the chance to take the spotlight, he pushed Ion out. And now, the world had seen the real star. Zaid, he was just another name in a big college. No one clapped when he walked in. No children smiled when they saw him. He had success. But Ion had meaning. Zaid's roommate walked in and said, "Bro, that slum guy, he's everywhere. My mom even shared his video on WhatsApp." Zaid forced a smile. "Yeah, I know him. Seriously. He's amazing, man. Giving free education. 2 kids, no sponsors, no help, just pure heart. That's something else." Zaid nodded, then turned to the window. Outside, the city was loud. But inside, he heard only silence. He picked up his phone, opened Ion's contact, and stared. Then deleted the message he had typed. "I'm sorry." He wasn't ready yet. Meanwhile, back in the slum, Ion's wall school had become a symbol. Local media, social workers, and even college students came to help. Volunteers brought notebooks, artists painted the wall with colors. Ion added a small library in a broken wooden cupboard. Every day, more children showed up. Some sat on the floor. Some stood, but all of them listened with eyes full of wonder. He taught English, maths, science, and hope. One evening, a woman in a clean blue sari came to visit. She introduced herself as Mrs. Farah, an education officer. "We've seen your work," she said. "There's a new government initiative to support informal schools. We want to register yours and provide resources." Ayan looked surprised. "But I'm not qualified. I don't even have a degree." She smiled. "You have something better. Proof. Results. We can help you finish your own education too, and you'll be a certified teacher." Ayan's throat tightened. "Is this real?" She placed the papers on the table. "Only if you want it to be." That night, Ayan sat with his mother and told her everything. She cried softly and held his hand. "Your father would have been proud," she said. "But I'm even more proud. Because you didn't just survive, you bloomed." The next few months passed like a dream. Ayan's classes got structured. He learned online at night. Children scored better in school. Some passed competitive exams. People came from other towns to see the wall, School of Light. Ayan still wore the same slippers, still sat with the children on the floor. But now, he spoke at small conferences, shared his story, and inspired others to start similar projects. His name started appearing in magazines. The boy who turned betrayal into blessing. But the higher he rose, the more his past knocked louder. One day, as he finished a lesson, a boy came running. "Bye. Someone's here to see you, says he knows you from school." Ayan walked out, his heart skipped. Zaid was standing there. They stared at each other for a long time. No words, just silence filled with memories. Zaid finally spoke. "You look different." Ayan smiled slightly. "You look the same." They both laughed, but it was nervous. Heavy real. Zaid walked slowly toward the wall. He touched the bricks where the children had written their names. "You built something beautiful." Ayan nodded. "It wasn't just me. Pain helped." Zaid's eyes welled up. "I wanted to come earlier, but I didn't know what to say." Ayan didn't look away. "Then say what you mean." Zaid took a deep breath. "I was scared. Back in school, you were always better. I thought, if I removed you, I'd shine more. But I didn't. I just lost you and myself." Ayan looked down, then back at Zaid. "You didn't remove me. You redirected me." Zaid wiped his face. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." Ayan paused. "Maybe not, but forgiveness isn't always earned. Sometimes, it's given so we can both be free." They stood under the fading sunlight, two friends with a broken past and a future yet to write. Zaid looked at the kids playing nearby. "Can I help here?" Ayan hesitated, then nodded. "Only if you're ready to sit on the floor first." Zaid smiled. "I'm ready." That evening Zaid taught English to 3 boys while Ayan fixed a broken bench. They didn't talk much, but something old and sacred returned between them. A friendship not rebuilt, but reborn. But not everyone was pleased. That night, the local leader who had once threatened Ayan returned. This time, with more men and louder threats. "You think this is your land now? Media? Officers? All because of you? We warned you." Ayan stood firm. "I teach children. You fear that? Then you're weaker than them." The man raised a hand to hit him, but before he could, Zaid stepped in front. "Touch him, and I'll make sure the world sees it." The men backed away. Cameras were now everywhere, and Ayan wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, a bigger surprise came. Well-known universities sent an official letter. They had seen Ayan's interviews and progress. They were offering him a full scholarship, accommodation, a flexible course so he could study and run his school. The letter ended with, "We believe you'll not just be a student. You'll be our teacher." Ayan stood still. Zaid read the letter over his shoulder and whispered, "The stage is calling." But Ayan said nothing, just folded the letter and stared at the wall where his students waited. He had a choice, and the whole world was watching. Ayan sat under the neem tree, the university letter still in his hand. Around him, children ran, laughed, and scribbled letters on the wall. His dream had arrived, but it didn't feel the way he imagined. Zaid walked over and handed him tea. "You're quiet," he said. Ayan nodded. "This should feel like a victory, but all I feel is fear." Zaid sat beside him. "Because it's not just your life anymore. It's theirs too." Ayan looked at the little girl who once couldn't spell her own name, now reading a full sentence out loud. "If I leave, what happens to them?" Zaid hesitated. "And if you don't, what happens to you?" That question stayed with Ayan all night. His mother saw him sitting with the lights off. "You've been given a gift," she said gently, "but you're afraid to open it." Ayan looked at her. "I'm not afraid of the gift, Oma. I'm afraid it'll take me away from here." She placed her hand on his. "Maybe that's not a bad thing. Sometimes, distance helps the heart grow deeper, not colder." Ayan stared at the envelope again. The seal felt heavier than any weight he had ever lifted. The next morning he walked into the class late. The children were already waiting. "Where were you, sir?" asked a boy. Ayan smiled. "Thinking about a big decision." The room fell silent. "Someone offered me a chance to go back to school. A big one. Far from here. But if I go, I won't be here every day." The children looked confused. One girl raised her hand. "So we stop learning?" Ayan shook his head. "No, never. I will find a way. We'll keep this going together." The smallest boy in the back whispered promise. Ayan bent down to meet his eyes. I promise. Later that day, he walked into the town library, where Zaid was helping arrange used books for donation. I've made my decision, Ayan said. Zaid turned, hopeful. You're going? Ayan nodded. Yes, but I'm coming back. Every weekend, every holiday. And I'll train someone here to teach in my place while I'm gone. Zaid smiled. You're building more than a school. You're building a legacy. Ayan looked at the sky. I just want them to know they matter. That their story doesn't end in the slums. A week later, Ayan packed a small bag. Only essentials. A few clothes. A notebook filled with lesson plans. And a photograph of his first class 8 kids, with big smiles and chalk-covered hands. The morning he left, the whole neighborhood came to say goodbye. His students had made a banner from old bed sheets that read, "Come back stronger, teacher by." Yeah, Zaid handed him a file. You'll need this for admission. I filled in the forms for you. Ayan looked at him, grateful. You've changed. Zaid looked down. No, I'm just becoming who I was supposed to be, at the university. Ayan felt lost. Everyone spoke fast. Wore branded clothes, knew big words. On the first day he sat at the back and didn't talk to anyone. During break, some students whispered, "Isn't he that slum guy?" Another one laughed. I saw his video. He teaches with chalk on a wall. Ayan heard everything, but said nothing. He had faced worse. That evening he called his mother Uma. This world is different, she replied softly. So are you. But different doesn't mean smaller, it just means new. He walked to the window and watched the city lights. I'll try. Weeks passed. Ayan studied hard, spoke rarely. But when he did, professors listened. He shared simple insights, real stories. Unlike others who quoted books, Ayan quoted life. One day, during a seminar on education, a professor asked, "What does real learning look like?" Ayan stood up slowly. It looks like a child writing their name for the first time on a wall, with broken chalk, and a full heart. The room fell silent. No one laughed. One girl even clapped. Soon things changed. Students started asking him questions after class. One offered to help build an online page for his wall school. Another donated her old laptop. A small group even formed a team project Light. Every Sunday, they traveled with Ayan back to the slum to help with classes. What started as pity turned into respect, but something unexpected happened. The letter stayed on the table like a stone no one wanted to touch. Ayan read it again and again, hoping the words would change, but they didn't. Arbaz had found a way to strike back, not through fists or insults, but through the law. 10 days, Zaid whispered. He wants us out in 10 days. Ayan stood silently, watching the children laugh on the other side of the wall. They didn't know, not yet, but soon, they would lose the only safe place they had, the wall that taught them to dream. Ayan clenched his fists. We're not leaving. The next morning, Ayan went to the local council office. He waited for hours, ignored by staff, told to sit, stand, come back later. Finally, a tired official called his name. Ayan, the one with the chalk school. Ayan nodded. That's me. The man shrugged. The land belongs to the municipal board, and according to this complaint, he waved Arboz's letter. You're using it illegally. Ayan leaned forward. It was a garbage dump before. I cleaned it. I taught here. The officer looked bored. That's not the point. Rules are rules. Ayan swallowed hard. Then changed the rule. Back at the slum, Zaid had already started gathering parents. They want to kick us out, he said plainly. The crowd gasped. One mother cried, "My son learned how to read because of this wall." Another man added, "This place gave us dignity. They can't take it." Ayan stepped forward. Then helped me fight, not with anger, but with unity. That evening, children painted a huge sign on the wall. This is our school. We will not leave. Someone took a photo. It went viral within hours. By the next day, local media picked up the story again. Ayan's name returned to the headlines. Chalk school faces demolition, one headline said. Hero teacher fights to save slum education. Another read. The attention brought both hope and fear. Supporters sent messages, but threats came to. One night, a rock smashed through Zaid's window. A note was tied to it. Stop now, or next time it's not a rock. Zaid looked at Ayan. They're serious. Ayan's eyes didn't waver. So are we. Meanwhile, the university, professors had taken notice. One of them, Dr. Shania Karashi, called Ayan to her office. This isn't just about saving a wall, she said. It's about justice. Ayan nodded. But how do we win when the law isn't on our side? Dr. Shania handed him a paper. Then we bring the law to our side. I've spoken to a few human rights lawyers. They want to help. Ayan felt hope stir again. Are you serious? She smiled. You've given your life to others. Let us do the same for you. 2 days later, Ayan stood before a court. His hands trembled, but his voice didn't. I didn't build this school for fame or money. I built it because no one else would. If that's a crime, then punish me. But don't punish the children. Arbus's lawyer argued loudly, waving documents. He's using government land. It's illegal. The judge listened silently. Then, with a calm voice, said, I need time to review. You'll have my decision in 5 days. 5 days. That's all they had. Back in the slum, fear returned. Would they wake up one morning to bulldozers? Would their books be turned to dust? Ion stood by the wall every day, teaching, smiling, pretending nothing was wrong. But inside, every tick of the clock felt like a countdown. On the third night, the children held candles and stood beside the wall. Even if they take this place, one girl said, they can't take what we learned. Ion wiped his eyes. No, they can't. But on the fourth day, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived not from the court, not from the government, but from a university. Abroad, Oxford. Ion read it slowly. We are honored to invite you as a guest speaker for our Global Education Conference. Zaid stared at the paper. Oxford, as in England. Ion nodded, shocked. They want me to talk about the wall school. His voice shook. They see me. Zaid grinned. The world finally does. Ion didn't know what to feel. His home was under threat. Yet doors he never dreamed of were opening. Dr. Shania called him that evening. You have to go, she said. Your voice matters now more than ever. Ion shook his head. I can't leave now. Not while this place is in danger. She paused. What if sharing your story there helps save this place? What if they listen and act? Ion sat in silence. Then I'll go. But just before he could book the ticket, the final day arrived. The court's decision. Ion and Zaid waited outside, surrounded by news reporters and curious onlookers. The judge walked in. The room went silent. He cleared his throat. This court has reviewed all arguments. It recognizes that while the land in question is technically government property, it has been repurposed for a public good, without profit, and with the community's full support. Ion held his breath. The judge continued. Therefore, this court grants temporary protection to the wall school, pending official rezoning and review by the education department. Gasps filled the courtroom. Ion blinked. We won. Zaid hugged him. We won. Outside, people cheered. Parents cried. Children clapped and danced. The wall was safe, at least for now. That evening, Ion stood before the wall and looked up at the stars. We're still here, he whispered, and we're not going anywhere. But just as things began to settle, another letter came. This time from the Ministry of Education. Ayaan opened it slowly. The words made his hands shake. You are hereby invited to receive the National Award for Educational Innovation. But at the bottom, a handwritten note added something else. We're also reviewing your school for official registration. Zaid read over his shoulder. If that happens, this won't be a wall school anymore. Ion looked at the children. Painting a sun on the bricks, it'll be something bigger. Ion didn't sleep that night. The news about the award and registration felt too big, too sudden. He kept replaying the words in his head. National Award for Educational Innovation. Him, the boy who once hid behind buildings to avoid shame, the man who taught on a broken wall with stolen chalk. It felt like a dream. But morning came, and the wall still stood. The children still gathered, and Ion still held his piece of chalk like a sword. Zaid brought tea. Your phone won't stop ringing, he said, smiling. Journalists, NGOs, even old classmates. Ion sipped the tea. Strange, isn't it? No one saw us when we struggled, but now everyone wants to talk. Zaid sat beside him. That's how the world is. But don't forget why you started. Ion looked at the wall. The paint was peeling, but the spirit was alive. He remembered the first child he taught here, barefoot, nervous but curious. That child had grown. Others had followed. This wasn't just a school, it was a revolution. And now, the country had noticed. The ceremony for the award was in the capital. Grand stage, ministers, cameras, lights. Ion felt out of place just thinking about it. He didn't own a suit. He didn't know how to make a speech. But the invitation said clearly, you must come. Before leaving, Ion gathered the children. I'm going to speak on a big stage, he said, voice shaking slightly. Not for fame, but for all of you. I want them to hear your voices. Through mine? One child raised her hand. Will you tell them about the games we played here? Ion smiled. Every single one. Another boy asked, will you wear a tie? Everyone laughed. Ion looked down at his worn-out shirt. Maybe, but not if it chokes me. The journey to the capital was quiet. Zaid came along. It was the first time either of them had been on a plane. Ion stared out the window, watching clouds drift past. Funny, he whispered, how I once thought I'd never leave my street. Zaid chuckled. Now you're flying above it. At the airport, cameras waited. People clapped when they recognized him. Some children even held signs. Chalk hero? Ion felt shy. He never wanted attention, just a chance to teach. The event was massive. Red carpets, flashing lights, government officials in sharp suits. Ion stood quietly, feeling like a tree in a sea of polished glass. Then a voice called him on stage. Please welcome Mr. Ion Mirza, founder of the Wall School. Applause echoed. Ion walked slowly. Each step felt heavy. But when he reached the microphone and looked at the crowd, he didn't see ministers or reporters. He saw his wall, his students, the small faces waiting back home. And with that, he spoke. I am not a trained teacher. I have no degrees, no certificates. Just a wall, a piece of chalk, and a belief that every child deserves a chance. The hall fell silent. I didn't build a school. I cleaned a space where garbage once lived. I started teaching because no one else would. And today, I stand here not for myself, but for children who are still waiting to be seen." A single clap broke the silence. Then another, and another. Soon the whole hall was standing. After the ceremony, ministers came to shake his hand. "We've heard about your court case," one said. "We're working on a permanent solution." Another added, "We're sending a team to evaluate your wall school for official registration. It might even become a model for low-cost education." Ion nodded, heart pounding. Things were moving fast. Too fast. On the way back, Zaid said, "Do you realize what just happened?" Ion looked out the window. "No, but I know it's not the end." Back home, the wall school was decorated with flowers. Children ran to greet them. One girl gave him a handmade card. It had a drawing of the wall, with tiny stick figures under a big yellow sun. Inside it said, "Thank you for seeing us." Ion's eyes filled. "I should be thanking you," he whispered. Days passed, then weeks. The team from the ministry came. They took photos, interviewed children, measured everything. The letter sat heavy in his pocket all day. Ion didn't tell Zaid about it. He didn't tell the children, but inside a storm was rising. The words kept echoing, "They haven't stopped watching you." Who were they? The old building, honest the political men who once threatened him, or someone new. Ion had seen enough of the world to know one thing. Whenever something good happens in the open, darkness watches from corners. He continued teaching, but his eyes kept scanning the street. He smiled at the children, but his heart stayed alert. That night, Zaid noticed, "You're not eating properly," he said. Ion forced a smile. "I'm just tired." Zaid didn't push further, but he watched too. 3 days later, it happened. A young man, maybe in his 20s, arrived at the wall school. He wasn't a parent. He didn't look like he belonged in the slum. His shoes were clean, his phone expensive. He stood watching the children, then asked Ion softly, "Can we talk?" Ion stepped aside. The man whispered, "There are people who don't like how visible you've become." Ion crossed his arms. "Why?" The man smiled sadly. "Because you proved they were wrong. That you could teach without their system. That you didn't need millions. Just truth. And now they're scared others will follow you." Ion didn't blink. "Are you threatening me?" The man shook his head, warning you. "I used to work for them. I left when I saw what they were doing to honest people like you. Just ... Be careful." He left just as quietly as he came. Ion stood frozen for a long time. Later, when the children were gone, he finally told Zaid, "We're not done fighting." Zaid clenched his fists. "Let them come. This wall has survived more than fear." But Ion knew. This was different. This wasn't just about a wall anymore. It was about the idea. The spark. If that spread, their control would crack. And they'd do anything to stop that. 2 nights later, the warning became real. Ion returned from buying notebooks, and the wall was gone. Not destroyed. Painted over. Every word. Every drawing. Every star. All covered in gray paint. The words "unauthorized structure," "government property," were stamped across it. Ion dropped the notebooks. His knees hit the ground. He felt like someone had erased part of his soul. By morning, the news had spread. The children arrived and stood. In silence, one small boy touched the wall and began to cry. Another whispered, "Where will we learn now?" Ion didn't answer. He couldn't. He sat on the ground, hands in his lap, like a man mourning a death. Zaid stood beside him, boiling with anger. This was not a mistake. This was a message. Journalists arrived. Microphones shoved toward Ion. "You do now?" they asked. Ion looked up. His voice was hoarse. "They think paint can stop us." He stood. "Let's begin again." That evening, Ion did something unexpected. He took the children and walked down the street, to an abandoned lot. An old bus stood there, rusted and tilted. He climbed onto it and shouted, "This is our new classroom." The children laughed. Some clapped. Others ran forward. Zaid followed him up. "You're serious?" Ion nodded. "If walls are illegal, we'll find wheels." The next day, the wall school became the bus school. Ion cleaned the seats, painted the windows. The children helped. They made it their own. Soon, pictures of the bus spread across the internet. "The man who won't quit," one article said. "From wall to wheels," said another. Support poured in again. Artists came to paint the bus with bright colors. Volunteers offered fans, solar panels, and even a bookshelf. Ion stood back and watched. "You can erase walls," he whispered, "but not dreams." But the shadows returned again. One evening, he received a phone call. The voice was masked. "You're making too much noise. Back off, or it won't be the wall next time." Ion listened silently, then said, "Thank you for confirming we're doing something right," and hung up. That night, Zaid argued, "We should go to the media, show them the threats." But Ion shook his head. "No, they want us to be scared. If we react, they win. We'll answer them with teaching." The next morning he arrived early. The bus stood shining, but something felt wrong. Stepped inside and froze. Books torn, paint scratched, windows broken. Someone had come in the night. This was no warning. This was war. For the first time, Ion's shoulders dropped. He walked out, sat on the ground, and buried his face in his hands. Children began to arrive. One by one, they saw the damage. No one cried this time. They sat beside him, quiet, loyal. Zaid came last. He looked around, then looked at Ayan. Is this the end? Ayan didn't speak. Then a small girl stood up. Her name was Ronnie, 7 years old. Missing 2 front teeth, she walked to the front of the bus, picked up a chalk piece from the dirt, and wrote on the side of the bus, "Still learning." Everyone stared. Ayan stood up slowly. He looked at her then, looked at the children. Then picked up another piece of chalk, and began to write. Next to her, still fighting, they wrote all day. On the bus, on the ground, on paper, on their hands. We are the school. Learning is our right. Paint can't stop truth. People walking by stopped, took pictures, recorded, shared. Within hours, the hashtags exploded. Hashtag still learning. Hashtag chalk revolution. Hashtag bus school. That evening, a lawyer arrived. Ayan didn't know him. He said, "I've followed your journey. I filed a petition today to grant permanent status to your school and protect it under law, and I won't take a rupee from you." Ayan's eyes welled. Why? The man smiled. Because my daughter saw your video and asked, "Why doesn't my school feel like that?" You reminded me why I became a lawyer in the first place. Ayan didn't sleep that night, but not because of fear, because for the first time, he believed they might actually win. But the next morning, a child ran up with a phone. "Sir, it's viral again, but there's something else." Ayan took the phone. The top headline read, "Famous bus school teacher to be investigated for fraud. Government officials raise questions about his past." He stared at the screen and whispered, "They just changed the game." Ayan stared at the headline. His hands didn't shake. His heart didn't race, but something inside him went still. Fraud? What fraud? He had no past to hide. No lies. Only truth. But truth, he knew now, could be twisted by those in power. Zaid ran toward him, holding his own phone. "They're showing your old college file," he said. "They're saying you lied about your degree." Ayan frowned. "That file. But I never finished college. I told them that in every interview." Zaid nodded. "Exactly. But they're editing clips, making it look like you claimed otherwise." Ayan finally sat down. The bus, the children, the noise faded. This was no longer about teaching. This was war. Not just against a wall, but against a system that feared one man with chalk. By noon, news vans returned, but this time, they weren't cheering. They were circling. One reporter pushed a mic forward. "Ayan, do you deny the allegations?" Ayan stayed calm. "I never said I was a graduate. I said I left college to serve." Another shouted, "Are you running an illegal school?" Zaid stepped forward, but Ayan held his arm. "Let them speak," he whispered. And when it grew quiet, he said only this, "I teach children who were forgotten. If that's illegal, I'll break the law every day." The reporters didn't know how to respond. The mic dropped slightly. That moment, quiet but powerful, sprayed across the country. Hashtags changed again. Hashtag Heedich's truth. Hashtag not AFRAUD. But so did the attacks. 2 officers came the next day. "We need to question you," they said, politely, but firmly. Zaid followed him to the station. Ayan sat in a cold chair for 6 hours. They asked about funds, donations, whether the bus was stolen, whether he was connected to foreign organizations. It was clear they were trying to break him. He answered everything. Calm clear. They found nothing, but the message was sent. "We can touch you any time." That night, Ayan returned to the bus. The children waited for him in silence. Some had cried, others held drawings they made for him. One small boy handed him a note. It said, "Don't let them erase our colors." Ayan held back tears. "I won't." The lawyer returned 2 days later. "The petition has gone to court," he said. "We have a chance, a real one. If the judge rules in our favor, the school will be protected." Ayan nodded. "And if not?" The lawyer looked away. "They could shut it all down." Ayan sat on the bus steps that night, staring at the stars. Zaid sat beside him. "We've done everything we could," he said. Ayan didn't reply. Then softly he asked, "If they end it, will it all disappear?" Zaid smiled gently. "Only if you stop believing in it." The court hearing came. Small room. Big moment. Ayan wore a simple shirt, the same shoes he wore when he taught on bare ground. The courtroom was full. Journalists, activists, parents, and in one corner, quietly sitting some of his students. The judge read through files. The government lawyer spoke first. "This man is not certified. His school is not registered. He's misleading poor children." Then Ayan's lawyer stood. He never hid his past, never claimed to be certified, and yet he taught what no one else dared. The law must protect courage, not punish it. The judge listened, said little, and finally said, "I'll decide in 2 days." Those 2 days felt like years. Ayan didn't sleep, neither did the children. They made cards, banners. They waited outside the bus every morning. The whole city seemed to be holding its breath. Then the message came. Ruling announced. "Come to court." Ayan walked slowly, Zaid beside him. Outside the courthouse, hundreds had gathered. Some held signs, others phones, but all eyes were on one man. Inside, the judge read calmly.